Hey guys, King Gath here with another dev update for Sim Settlements. This is the Patreon 25 plus August 2018 update, and in this video you guys are going to finally get to hear from some more of the Sim Settlements team. I had a chance to sit down and have some long conversations with a few members, and you're going to hear some excerpts from our conversation. We talked about all sorts of stuff about life and Fallout and gaming and what motivates everybody. We even got into some philosophical holes at some point, and I just want to give you guys kind of a taste of some of these conversations and some stuff I thought maybe you'd like to learn about the particular developers that are working on the team. Now, you may hear some stuff about things that are in development for Sim Settlements. These guys were told not to worry about that and just talk away, and I would edit accordingly, but I'm not going to edit it all out, so I'm going to let you guys hear some of that. Just know that anything that's mentioned in here that you're not sure of, that sounds like it's something in development, may or may not make it into final release. We tend to test out all sorts of ideas, and then depending on feedback from testers, we decide what should make it into release or not. Or if we can't make something work smoothly, we might remove it. So there's a lot of stuff you're going to hear that will make it into release, and a lot of stuff you're going to hear that maybe just kind of dies on the cutting room floor. And then there's also going to be some footage in the background, which is one of our guys working on some designs for Sim Settlements. So hopefully you guys find all of this interesting. Just like last time, please post some comments. Let me know what you think of this vid. Let me know if there's some things in particular in it that you liked or disliked, or some things that we haven't covered yet that you want to see more of in the future. All right, so intro out of the way. Please enjoy these candid conversations with King Gath and company. I guess one soundbite I can use is if you could just introduce yourself and tell what you do on the team. Like, that'll be awesome. So,
my name is Business Vulture. I'm, I guess, our lead level designer for the Sim Settlements team at the moment. I gather all concept art and plans and story details and turn them into playable locations that people can play about with and see in game.
For people listening to this, Business Vulture is working on stuff none of you have ever seen, because Sim Settlements is doing some very big things in the background. So when I first, actually I think you reached out to me at first, if I'm not mistaken.
So, yeah.
You were working on some world space mods and you had a few little releases for Fallout. Had you modded any games before that, or was Fallout kind of your first jump into the modding scene?
This whole thing for me started with Skyrim. I actually kind of remember the day I found the Skyrim creation kit. This was back in maybe 2014. I was living in an apartment in Washington, going to school. And I was looking around on Steam, and I found this thing called the Skyrim Creation Kit. It's like, oh, that's cool. I like Skyrim. I wonder what this is. I'll try this out. And I was like, wow, I have access to every single asset in Skyrim. I can build some really cool things. And I just started tinkering around with it, building little dungeons and little player homes that I never released. But and then Fallout 4 comes around. The creation kit comes around, and I decide, okay, I'm actually going to make some stuff and release it for people to use. And so I made a couple of things, a couple small things. I think the most downloads any of my files has is like 3,000, maybe something like that. But then I started work on a big quest and dungeon mod, specifically for Far Harbor. It was called the Far Harbor Expansion Project. It was just sort of wanting to build something big and grand and build a bunch of different cool-looking things. And I was somewhat far into development with that when I joined the team.
Now, is the plan to do, you said you want to do quests and stuff, was your plan to do a full story behind it with characters and get audio recorded and do some scripting and do all the whole gambit?
Oh, geez. I don't know about that much. I kind of planned to have it be just a sort of dungeon pack, you know, not as much a big storyline driven full DLC package kind of thing.
So kind of like the breadcrumb stuff where you'll find terminal entries and notes and things like that.
Yeah, that kind of thing. Because, you know, I don't I'm not a tech wizard. I don't know how to do the coding and the voice recording and the quest aliases and all that. I just build pretty things.
Some really pretty things. Some of the stuff I've seen, it's nice. Yeah, it's very awesome to have you on board to be doing this stuff, especially because you seem to, like, in the spaces that you've already designed. Which, for those of you who don't know, Business Vulture is the man behind the Crystal Cavern, and if you haven't found it yet, spoiler alert, the hidden cavern underneath of the hazmat facility. And they're both very well designed. The lighting is fantastic. They're fun to look in. You understand the basics of, like, making sure the whole place is sealed so that there's no cracks and, like, garbage in the, when you're looking in the corner of your eye where you see all that infinite mirror texture nonsense or whatever
the
it is.
Void there.
Yeah, the void. And you understand how to set up the ambushes, and, like, you've got a great skill set to just roll with this stuff, which is really helpful, because a lot of the project where I get bogged down to is I tend to bring on people who are just a specialist in a certain thing, just a writer or just an artist or whatever, and then they don't know how to solve all those problems in game mechanics, and then I got to get my hands dirty. So you tend to have everything we've given you. It's very rare that you have run into something you haven't been able to just solve yourself. And I think the only thing you've hit me up for is scripts. I think, like we've talked about, is that's your one your one lacking ability, and that's fine. Not everybody can do everything.
Yeah, and that's just from experience. Watching a bunch of YouTube videos, like, okay, I don't know how to do this, and I need to be able to do this to make a functional dungeon. Time to look up a YouTube video on how to do it. Okay. And Bethesda has a couple of online tutorials, like for their Skyrim creation kit, which are sometimes applicable for Fallout 4, sometimes not. So it's just I guess a library or a repertoire of information and minor skills that come in handy.
Well, you must have the drive, and you're the type of person who just likes to solve problems, because I think that's inherent in people who are creative. Is when you run into a challenge, is you don't just back down from it. You dig around and you find a solution to it.
Yeah, and speaking of solving problems, those come up in level design all the time, let me tell you. There have been times where I have rebuilt entire levels because it just doesn't feel right. And in fact, well, I won't mention the name of the area. That might be a bit of a spoiler for some quest lines. But there's one particularly large area that I had been working on for weeks. And I had just, like, basically gutted it and, like, restarted 2 or 3 times over because it just didn't feel right. It's like, okay, I need another room over here, I guess. Time to rip down this wall and redo this and move this around, which has actually let me develop a better workflow that makes sure I don't have to do that quite as often. Which does wonders for my time, for sure.
Yeah, modding can be a big time sink, because you'll think something's going to be simple, and then the next thing you know, it's like 3 hours have gone by and you just fixed that one wall. Like, it's like, wow.
Yeah.
Now, how much time would you say you spend in the game looking at things from a perspective of a player, as opposed to looking at it from the God perspective of the creation kit? Like, do you find yourself iterating a lot and going into game to see what it looks like from the player's perspective? Because it's quite different, like when you're looking above versus when you're down in there at scale.
I'd say I spend a vast majority of my time in the editor. Maybe a 20th or a 15th of my time is actually spent in game looking at it. The main reason I do in-game stuff is actually to test scale. Because scale is a really important thing, a surprisingly important thing, actually, with levels. Because not only do you have to worry about, like, can the player get through this doorway? Or is there room enough for their companion to walk and grab that item from that shelf over there? So sometimes in the creation kit, it's sort of hard to tell. And so I'll do a bunch of stuff and then test it once or twice in game, and sort of test the atmosphere and the creative side of it while testing the mechanical side of it. But I spend the vast majority of my time in the editor itself.
Sure. It is shocking how the scale differs so much between when you're looking at it in the editor versus when you're in game. And I'm not sure exactly why that is. I don't know if it's just that some of the props aren't to real life scale, so then it kind of skews your vision, because some of the stuff they do for game, just for the sake of art, is a little bigger than it needs to be, or a little smaller, or something aren't to real life scale.
I think the camera has a lot to do with it, because there are probably some FOV differences and some minor atmosphere and camera differences that make it just look like it's in game versus in editor, and colors and lights and things are different depending on mods too. So
there's also I don't know about the way you work, but I tend to rarely have any NPCs on my screen in the creation kit, because I'm generally designing structures. So then I can lose track of scale in that sense, is that I don't have a human around to tell me, that's half the height of a guy.
Yeah, I'll tell you something that's kind of funny and creepy at the same time, is that sometimes I'll put in an actor preset into my level to give a gauge of how tall a human is. And this is just a generic, naked character. And sometimes I'll forget to actually delete him before I test it in game. So I'll walk into this room and there'll just be some naked guy standing there, no dialogue or nothing, just standing in the middle of the room doing nothing. It's really creepy sometimes because I forget about it. But,
So, hello, I'm Sirick. I came onto the team almost a year ago now, and initially I joined just to do some voiceover. I've done voiceover for a few other games and a few other mods, and I knew of the mod because I'd played it. I'm a big Fallout fan. I've played since the first games, even though I was maybe a bit too young for them. And after I saw Sim Settlements come up, I thought, hey, this is pretty cool. I want to help this. I want to give some voices for it. Now, that was the initial reason that I joined, but somehow, I'm not entirely sure, I managed to trick King Gaff into letting me onto the writing team. And hopefully you'll also maybe hear my voice in the game somewhere. So keep an eye out for that.
I think your voice is actually already alive in the game, because you voiced Mr. Genius, which I keep getting messages asking me when that quest is going to be finished, because I think I tossed you the outline that we finally figured out. So if you haven't played this quest, spoiler alert, but the Mr. Genius plotline, I had a plan all for it, and then I ran into some technical issues. So I decided that rather than rushing it out for the big Industrial Revolution patch, we kind of put a pin in it. It's just sitting in people's quest logs waiting for a patch when it's finished. So I think we have the outline done for that, but need to get the rest of the lines recorded before I can proceed. But obviously that's not top priority for you, because you have a million hats you're wearing right now for our next big release.
So I don't know why you gave me as many hats as you did. As you said, we did not manage to hire back the original voice actor for the protagonist player, for Nate or Nora. I'm not even sure we could. I'm not sure if there's contractual things where maybe they couldn't work for us. So we're having to reuse all the old audio, I think, from the base vanilla game, not even the DLC.
Correct.
Just so.
How has that been as a writer? How has that been as a challenge? Has it helped you, do you think? Because I know I've talked about with some of the other people I've interviewed, is that having a lot of creative restraints actually makes the blank canvas easier to deal with. So how has the writing for the existing dialogue affected your writing? Have you liked it, hated it? Has it helped? Has it hurt?
Both. I've loved it and I've hated it. You hate it because you will have an idea in your head of how this quest is going to go. And you maybe get halfway into it, and then you realize, I don't have any player lines that can progress this or make any sense whatsoever. So often what you'll have to do is just use the new character you've put in there to say what you need the player to say, which it's not that natural, and maybe a few players will notice, well, that's kind of weird that that character said that, but I think they'll understand quite quickly, well, there's no way they could have the player say that line. So we have used that trick here and there. But at the same time, in that limiting you, it allows you to go areas you maybe would not have gone otherwise. There's definitely a few quests of mine which have ended differently or had different outcomes because, hey, that's a cool player line, and that kind of ties into what I've already written, and so I can use that. and have the quest end in this particular way. Without going into too much detail, there was a quest near the end of our mod with a plant. Originally, it wasn't going to be a plant. It was just going to be a random delivery. But just that one word of plant made this whole area spawn around it. And suddenly I had a character. I had where that character was, what they've been doing, just from this one line of plant. So there are things like that, and that makes you happy when you trip across this line. But generally speaking, there's a lot of time of you just typing in random words, random keywords, trying to find a line that the player has said that would make sense. I'd say most of my time has been spent going through the player lines, trying to find that one line that will work. More time than has actually been spent writing, I think.
Do you feel like you've fairly conquered that? Like, do you feel like you've got a good flow now and you can work a little more smoothly within those constraints?
I have my list. I have my list of cool things the player says where I can maybe see at some point I could use that, and so I don't have to try and find a word and hope that the player says a sentence with this word in it. And I also have a list of phrases and words the player character says that I can apply to other characters that I'm writing or other quests that I'm writing. And in doing that, they have shaped the way those quests are going. We have 2 optional characters, who I won't get too much into, but the player lines alone have dictated how their quest is going to go. And in some ways, it's really, really cool, because the player lines were just perfect, and it makes sense. Again, they're somewhat limiting and somewhat vague, but they kind of have to be. But it just gives you ideas you wouldn't otherwise had. It's been a unique challenge that I've not had to deal with before, but I think I've done a decent job.
Yeah, I think that was one of when I brought on each new writer, it was describing that challenge to them. I think was like that was kind of a litmus test to see if they could handle it. It was like when they some of them, when I told them that they would not be able to write any player dog, they're like, "Oh, I don't know if I can do this," because it's such a unique challenge. And I think you've got to have a fair good of experience with writing to be willing to take that on. There's also the challenge of writing branching dialogue that's meaningful, of knowing that, and I think you've alluded to this already, of that you want to have the player have meaningful choice. And doing that essentially means that you're writing multiple stories concurrently. Essentially, you have to be willing to you can't force the story into a certain direction if you want the player choice to be meaningful.
Yeah, as I said before, I appreciate Bethesda a lot more in the difficulties they have in having a main plot line where the player has to do these things and they can't really do it this other way. In older games, you could maybe think of alternate solutions to end this quest. No, you can't do that anymore, because you need the Brotherhood alive, or the way Bethesda did it is the Minutemen will always survive. You can't get rid of the Minutemen. They're your lifeline, and we've used that as well. So I appreciate it. As a player, it annoys me, but as a writer, I can see exactly why they did that and why it's necessary. Doesn't make it any less pleasant for a player, but you kind of it gives you more understanding, and so you're a tiny little bit less aggressive towards Bethesda in a way that I've noticed many people are. I think if you try and do what they did, and you'll run across the exact same problems, and you will suddenly understand, that's why all my options are exactly the same.
I'm Cpt Coots. I've been developing some coding on the subsystem for settler training. I've been doing outfits, which is really fun, some building design. Basically anything King Gath needs me to do that I'm capable of. That's me. Which
is a lot. You wear a lot of hats. Now, what made you get into modding? Because obviously, like there's something about it that does something for you if you're interested in diving in as deep as you have into the creation kit stuff.
Yeah, well, I guess I made like a couple really silly mods in Skyrim, like I made some armor sets that were based on like Hercene and Meridia. But what got me into Fallout modding was, quite honestly, I didn't like the city planner desk. I thought it was ugly. And so I wanted to make a new one. And so that's when I started farting around with some ideas, got in on the Discord channel. And I actually released a paint job on automaton robots before I finished my mod for Sim Settlements, doing a Vault-Tec paint job. But yeah, it was really just wanting to see what I wanted in the game and not wanting to wait around for somebody else to do it. So learning what I needed to learn. Yeah,
That's a
I
good,
actually
that's
think.
good motivation.
Yeah, I think I naively asked, "Has anyone done a reskin on the city planner's desk?" Not really knowing what I was talking about, and people were like, "No, I don't think so." And I was like, "Okay," and then realized it's not a reskin that needed to be done, and got to work.
So have you had any hobbies prior to, so modding seems like it's basically new to you. Essentially you've done just a little bit, but not a ton. Have you had hobbies before this that were similar that would have brought you down this path?
No, not really. I mean, I learned everything I needed to learn in GIMP in order to do this. I learned all the 3D modeling stuff I needed to know to do this. The programming and scripting stuff. I mean, so I have my PhD in mathematics, and I do quite a bit of coding for the simulations that I do, like in real life. But no, like my other hobbies are like martial arts and comic book movies. And I play a metric ass ton of D&D, and I have since like the early 90s. So this idea of like creativity that was like with some rules and some boundaries, and I get to play within those and push those boundaries. That's always been something that I've liked to do. Like the feedback and community feeling, which in modding terms, I've never seen anything like the Sim Settlements community of modders. And then like the feedback I get from users is just so ridiculously uplifting and good. Like, yeah, of course I'm going to throw a lot of time in this. It's a win-win kind of thing.
Yeah, Sim Settlements it's created this community I didn't anticipate, and it's very, very easy to commit a crazy amount of time to it because we've got passionate fans. We've got we're kind of all like myself, and even before I had a team, all of the people working on add-ons, we're all kind of working together to create a game essentially, and here's the way I look at now at Sim Settlements and mods in general, but especially Sim Settlements, just because it's growing, is that with all of the free game options out there now, we are essentially competing alongside the likes of Fortnite as far as for people's attention. So I think that kind of puts us into a mode, and I don't know if you feel this way, but I think given the quality I've seen of some of the Atom Pack authors, I think some of them maybe feel this a little bit too, is that we have to deliver a really good experience to players, and it pushes us to do better because it's like you could be spending your attention on a million different free games out there that are highly polished. So if you're going to spend time on my stuff, I'm going to make sure it's damn good.
Oh God, when I get a bug report where it's like sort of detailed, like, so I did this in your mod and this broke. Did I do something wrong? And I know they didn't. I know it's my fault. I instantly spring to action. It's like, oh my God, like the way that the people write these reports oftentimes are like, I love your work. I'm so passionate about this. I would love to have this in my game, but it's not working. What's going on? And yeah, I just spring to it. I could be doing a billion other things. I'm like, no, I'm going to patch this bug. I'm going to patch this bug and the 7 others that Pra has found since my last release. And
Pra is a master bug hunter.
he's my fucking beta tester with everything. He's like, hey, this is wrong, and this has physics, and this is broken. I'm like, shit. Okay, great. I even named one of my releases after him. I think I called it like Pra on the Prowl. He just found every bug that I squashed with that patch. But yeah.
Yeah, Pra and Land Cars, those two like find every little problem that is in the mod. And like usually if one of those two posts something, I immediately just add it to my list without even confirming it because I'm just like, those guys they're spot on. They know what they're doing.
No, I've never questioned Pra on a bug report. He's been like, this is wrong. I'm like, I'm sure it is. I will look into it. Yeah, I screwed it up. No, and it's funny, like with this community, like I'm not an artist by any stretch of the imaginations, but like people like wow, I just cussed in Quebecois French for you. You're welcome.
That one won't get bleeped. I'll leave that one in.
How can I remember her name? But so like I've learned to use GIMP, NifScope, Outfit Studio. I've started getting into 3DS, which makes me angry that I have to learn another piece of software. I've brushed up on my Notepad++ skills. Like all of these things come from me asking questions of other people who've given their time to the mod. They've given me advice on where to look or how to do it. And then, I've learned new pieces of software in order to make this product, which I don't have to do. But again, I started doing it. People started loving it. And I just feel like supported in that.
So now, given that Fallout 76 is multiplayer, what do you think is going to happen with the Fallout 4 community once that hits?
Oh, one of two things. Honestly, either we're gonna become a rare breed or we're gonna get stronger. That's my opinion on it. I know right now I pushed the limits on what my laptop is capable of doing in playing Fallout 4. I have a piece of crap work laptop that I use all this other stuff to tweak down all these settings. I'm basically what would be considered not like low or very low, but I'm on like ultra low settings to play Fallout. So like 76 would involve me wanting to buy new hardware and stuff, and also a lot of the gameplay for me and folks like me. There's maybe 3 people I'd want to play with, period. And so I think if there's a lot of community that's like that, I think the support for Fallout 4 and modding will actually strengthen. Or, you know, I watched one of the most recent press conferences where they handled a lot of griefing and being a dick, and I like a lot of their solutions. It could make us a more rarefied breed, really.
Let's say the bottom falls out of Fallout 4 and most people end up loving 76 and jump ship, and we find that, you know, there's only, you know, a few thousand people left still playing Fallout 4, as opposed to right now where there's, you know, we get tens of thousands of downloads every patch, and that's not even, you know, a lot of that's unique. So there's definitely a constant flood of people. But if that goes down to a trickle, what would you like to see happen with the Sim Settlements community? Because I think that that's something, it's something very unique in that we've got essentially a bunch of modders and a bunch of players all collectively building something together that's building towards something bigger and bigger.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you want to take, like you said, everything goes down to a trickle, and you want to take that energy, I mean, I think as a community and as players, it would be really awesome to see that happen in 76. With the size of the landscape there, the ability to, in some sense, my understanding is almost like build settlements wherever you want, doing some sort of like, you know, working on porting our stuff over there and really building a system that makes sense with multiplayer, while I'm not really sure quite what that is, could be something really great and really strong. I mean, imagine the ability to recruit settlers that defend your settlement from other players who are like marked as a murderer or something. Like that seems to me to be really cool, and that could be very cool. And in some sense, if it's on a server, everybody's playing with that sense, or with that mod and with that capability. It creates an actually like a much more dynamic landscape. Granted, we'd have to figure out how to build in NPCs into a game that doesn't seem to have any.
All right, guys, so now I want to give you a sneak peek of the mod I mentioned in the last video. This is called Workshop Plus. And as you can see, it is a dramatic departure from normal workshop mode, because you get to fly around like your god, and this is your playground. So I'm kind of taking a new approach with workshop mode. In my eyes, once you go into workshop mode, you're no longer your character. Now you are creating. So I've started to take some inspiration from different software like Photoshop. So I've started to build in features that treat workshop mode more like a designer's tool than like something that needs to be immersive, because it's not really immersive for you to just slap down fully constructed buildings anyway. So let's talk about things like an undo button, or how about the corresponding redo button. That stuff to me is a no-brainer. We want that stuff in a creative tool, so why not have it in workshop mode? Or one of my favorite tools of all, and I think some of the people I've given this to so far agree, is the clone tool. So this lets you just pick something up and just make copies of it wherever you push a hotkey. Now this is probably doesn't seem super impressive when it's just an item you just built, because obviously you have that handy in workshop mode. But where it's especially helpful is for items you can't remember where they are in the build menu, which is actually a legitimate problem if you've got a lot of build items. Like if you're using the Project Blueprint mods, you'll know that there are thousands of items, and keeping track of where you found one can be really difficult, and it gets really frustrating to have to look through the build menus over and over again. So one of the ways you could use this is to go through the build menus and kind of make yourself a palette. So you kind of place down down all the items that are interesting to you, and then you come back and grab them and make quick clones. And what's a real extra special feature about this is that the items you can clone don't even have to be normally buildable. Like, you can just come over and like grab this house, for example, and make a copy of it. And that is all thanks to Place Everywhere, which lets you pick up scrappable items as if they're normal items, and anything you can pick up, the Workshop Plus mod can detect and allow you to make clones of it. So this is just a smattering of the features that are going to be in the final release. These are the ones that I know are done enough that I could show you guys, but I'm very excited to get that out. It should be coming out sometime in September, and this is just one of a series of small mods that I've been working on that will all be coming out over the next couple of months. And this is in addition to the massive project on some settlements that's going on that you just saw during some of that background footage of those interviews. So guys, I hope you like this video. There's a lot more content to come. I'm going to continue to put out these dev updates every month to give you guys a little bit of background information on how we roll, about some of the stuff that's coming up in the future. Again, give me your comments. Let me know if you enjoyed the content of this video, or if there's any particular things you'd like to see me cover more of, less of, etc. All right, guys, thank you so much for all of your support, and take care and enjoy the mod.